Spain is a country that has very high unemployment. And I think more than unemployment, very high underemployment. You study to be a psychologist, but you're working, I don't know, in a perfumeria, like a Druni or something. Not to knock those jobs, but it's not what you studied for, you know?
Yeah.
I don't know, like if you're speaking English very loudly with a group of other English speakers, the locals might be like a little bit, I don't know, like turned off by that. I think it's important to try and befriend locals, but not to only want to befriend them because they're a local. Like, I would say visit before you come here. Visit before you come here, because if you're looking for that like very charming Spanish life, it's not really what you're gonna get in Madrid.
Today, we will talk with a New York-born astrologer and astrocartographer who relocated to Spain in 2019 and launched her own business, Your Stellar Truth, blending relocation expertise with modern Western astrology. We will talk about her journey, her work helping people align not only with their birth chart but also with the place they live or they are planning to move to, and how magic and practicality came together in both her personal and work practice. Today on Expat Experts, Isabel Guerreira. Let's start. Isabel, welcome to Expat Experts. I'm really happy to have you here. Yeah, maybe we can start from the beginning. I mean, you can tell us a little bit about your background and where did you grow up and what was your life before moving to Spain? You moved to Spain and we will talk about it later, but you're from New York originally, no?
Yes. Thank you for having me, by the way. Really happy to be here too. Yeah, I grew up in Brooklyn, New York City, in a pretty residential part of Brooklyn, I would say. Like, not super urban. It's kind of far from Manhattan and all those places. And yeah, I grew up to Italian parents. So I always kind of had that cultural connection somewhat with Southern Europe. Like, I grew up going to Italy like every couple of summers, sometimes every summer, but not always. You know, I had visited Spain and Portugal, France. So I guess growing up in that background, I always felt like drawn to that area of the world. And I think that might have influenced me to move to Spain eventually when I did, like about 6.5 years ago almost. But yeah, in New York, I not the most interesting. Like I was always lived in the same house. And then for university, I lived in upstate New York, which is like it's kind of like the countryside, right? Like there's a lot of mountains, more nature, it's less densely populated. And there I studied journalism. And then I worked in journalism briefly. And then I kind of had an inkling. I kind of knew I wanted to move abroad and I wanted to kind of pursue a profession that could let me get my foot in the door abroad. So I decided to get my master's in New York City in TESOL education, like teaching English as a second or other language. That's what it stands for, TESOL education. And then I got that master's and I worked at the same time. I worked at a community college teaching students from all over the world, like literally in Manhattan. And then, yeah, after I finished my master's that summer, I moved to Spain. I applied for a job and I had an offer to teach. And yeah, that's how I got there in the first place.
Why Spain? Like you were proactively searching for Spain itself, or you were like open to wherever you had the option of work, let's say like this?
There were definitely different factors. First of all, like I wanted to go live in a country in Europe, specifically more like Southern Europe. Like I don't love places that are super rainy. I like sunshine. I'm very prone to like sort of prone to like seasonal depression. So I wanted a place that had like better weather and I wanted to go to a country where I spoke the language. So the options would have just been like basically Spain or Italy because I speak Italian and I speak Spanish. Like I already spoke Spanish before moving to Spain. I definitely improved it a lot like since moving. I had like maybe a B1-ish, maybe like a
Mm-hmm.
high B1, but now I would say I'm closer to, I'm like more like a mid C1.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. I just chose Spain because it has like pretty good public transportation, at least compared to Italy. I kind of did my research on that, and also my astrocartography, like because I am an astrocartographer, and I
Mm-hmm.
looked into my astrocartography for both countries, and the in Spain it seemed more promising, and I definitely energetically feel better here than in Italy. Like I love going to Italy, but I can't see myself really living there long term. And so that was another factor in my decision. So I'd say it was a combination of like the language, knowing that it had good public transportation because I don't drive. Like I still don't have my license. I'm about to turn 32 and I still don't have my license. I'm a bit scared of driving.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, the astrocartography, wanting to like improve my Spanish. And yeah, those were the factors. I know it's kind of random. And yeah, I didn't even bother applying to jobs in any other country, just Spain.
Okay. Nice. I mean, I have a couple of questions already because I'm zero knowledgeable about astrology, astrocartography, and everything that you are doing currently right now. So when you say like you did check countries from an astrocartographic perspective, how does this work? Like what are the factors that you need to check out to see if a country fits more in your personality, or what are you checking in there?
Yeah, so I guess I'll give you like a mini lesson. Astrology is based on birth charts, and so is astrocartography. So everyone has the birth chart that they're born with. And then in astrocartography, the theory is that when you relocate, your chart like relocates with you and it changes. And so when you look at your relocated chart in a country, there's definitely things that you want to look at. Like there's this angle in the birth chart. So there's four main angles in the birth chart. And the ascendant is like, and you might have heard people talking about it, like your rising sign. It's your identity, like parts of your personality, your inclinations. And then you have your descendant, which shows like your approach and your desires out of relationships with other people and like the kind of people you might attract. And then your midheaven is your career. And then your IC is like how you relate to a location and the associations you make with a location. And my IC in New York was in Aries. And I felt a lot of danger there. I felt a lot of hostility, just energetically and literally, like physical danger. And then my IC in in Madrid shifted to Cancer. And Cancer is all about feeling at home, feeling more comfortable, feeling like you're at home, feeling like you're with family.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really has been reflected here. Like, even though things haven't been perfect, and I have definitely gone through difficult things here, like challenges, as I think most expats do, or expats, immigrants, there's a whole debate about that word. I'm not going to get into it, but
Yeah.
I think that it's been reflected here. Like, I feel very comfortable here. I feel very comfortable to stay here for a very long time. I feel very at home. I feel like I've integrated really, really, really well with the locals.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, that, and also like the planetary lines, which are reflective of your relocated chart. So I'm on my moon descendant line. So my moon is near the descendant angle in the relocated chart. So the descendant, remember, is your relationships with others, and the moon represents emotional resonance and connectivity. I immediately, within like less than 6 months, like met my fiance here,
Mm-hmm.
and we're together, and I made a lot of very close like chips. I wouldn't say big groups, but like close, like one-to-one connections. I've found a lot of good collaborations for my business here. So everything that's been reflected in the relocated chart has like manifested in real
Okay.
life. Does that make sense? I tried my best to
Yeah, yeah,
explain
absolutely.
it in an easier way.
Thanks. I mean, thanks for that. I mean, at the end, it's just like I know some things. I mean, at the end, I know that there is astrological signs assigned to you. I know that there is a descendant and ascendant, but I didn't even know, for example, that when you relocate, these things can change. For example, depending on where you are. So definitely interesting. You talk bit about also challenges and I mean cultural adaptation. Language wise, it's very important normally, and it's a topic that we touch a lot in this podcast. But for you, I suppose that wasn't the biggest barrier because, as you said, you already were speaking Spanish when you moved there. So I suppose that make it easier. But how was the transition in general? Because Spain has a very different energy, rhythm, everything compared to New York, I suppose. So how was the cultural shocks, adjustments? I don't know.
Well, I guess like, going from New York to Madrid, like it's one big city to another. So like I felt like a difference, but it still feels like very international. Like Madrid is a quite international city. I wouldn't say maybe not as much as Barcelona, but like, it's quite
Mm,
international compared to every other place in Spain. And so in terms of that, it didn't feel too different. I actually wish it had a bit of a slower pace. Sometimes I do get overwhelmed with that. Like I came to Spain like wanting a bit of a slower pace in life, and it was really interesting when I first moved. My first year, I lived in a city, I don't know if you know it, called Alcalá de Henares, and it's pretty well known. And I lived
mm,
there for almost a year, and there I felt a much slower pace. Like things were very calm.
yeah.
It felt like more, I guess, cozier is the word. But the thing is that like most of my friends and like, my fiance at the time, we were just dating, but they were either in Madrid, like, or closer to Madrid. And I felt like I would just have to take the train or the bus, like, into Madrid, like about an
Mm,
hour. And it got tiring. And I decided to move into the city. But Alcalá definitely had the best of both worlds because it is a small city. It has a main street, a main area. There's also places to go. There are also places to go hiking.
mm,
There, the Henares River is there, and I really liked living there. I had a very good quality of life, but it just socially I felt a bit like isolated. So the first year, I guess you could say there were issues with feeling a bit isolated, like far from where most of my friends and my people
mm.
were. But I was working in Alcala. That's why I
Okay.
stayed there the first year. Then I commuted my second year, so the commute was hard. And then I guess with Spain versus New York, I guess like there is like a difference in like la manera de ser, like like the
Mm,
way of being. I don't know, like I just find like Europeans in general, like maybe compared to US Americans, sometimes they're not as welcoming. Like when it comes to like a group, like if you're brought into a group, like you really have to make a strong effort. Whereas I feel like in the US, like people love small talk and they like to get
mm,
to know new people, even if it's very superficial, but at least to get your foot in the door, right? Like to get your standing in a group, it's a bit easier. And also, like, in the US, we tend to learn more like Mexican Spanish or Latin American Spanish. So speaking the Spanish here in the beginning was really hard for me. Like the lisp and just understanding certain changes of words and expressions. And it was a little hard. Like speak very well and I spoke pretty well back then, but like sometimes I'd go into a store and I'd have to like ask the same question like three times. And I
mm.
hated that feeling because they're not the most patient here, like with that. Like, and it's sad because I feel like I always have tried, and I've improved and improved and improved, and despite how much I've improved, like sometimes I'm still met with like people correcting me or people kind of being like, oh, you're not from here, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm not, and what about it? um
Yeah. I mean, at the same time, I assume like you make a comparison that it's very difficult. The question that I ask you, because comparing a whole country with a city, it's not ideal. So the fact that you just pointed out, like cities like Alcalá de Henares, or other small cities around big cities, have a complete different life than going and living in the big cities in Spain, like Bilbao, Madrid, Barcelona. It has different vibes between regions of Spain. Also, like the vibe changes hundred
so
percent.
different. It's crazy. Like I compare, I think of Galicia, I think of like
Mm,
Andalusia, Madrid, like Catalonia. Like they're all just so varied, I guess. Like
mm,
some places are like when I think of like Valencia and Catalonia, like there's more similarities there, but like there's still so many differences. And then like
Yes.
Madrid is its own world, like Galicia is its own.
Yes, absolutely.
And I expected that, honestly. That didn't shock me because like Italy, my parents are from Italy, and Italy
North south.
is the same. Italy's the same way. Like even within like Sicily, where my parents are from, like there's so many rivalries between towns and between cities, and there's so many differences. So I expected that. Even in my own like country, like where I'm from, like where I grew up, like the US, it's similar.
Mm.
Every state has its own kind of vibe and identity. So I expected that, but I guess like for example, like what surprised me, I guess, was, growing up in New York, I was around a lot of people from Latin America, especially from like Mexico and the Dominican Republic. Those are like and Puerto Rico, like
Mm.
groups, like immigrant groups in New York that are quite prominent. Like that there's a lot of people from those countries. And people from those countries like tend to be very, very warm, like very friendly. And I was expecting that more in Spain. And it's like they can be very friendly, and I've made great friends here, but they're much slower to warm up to you.
Mm.
And in Italy, I think they're a bit like in the south, at least where my family's from, like they're quite warm too. So I guess I haven't really in Madrid, you don't get that as much. Like they're nice, but with like distance a little bit,
Okay.
So that's another thing that I guess surprised me. But I wouldn't say I had such difficulty with the transition. Like I'm a pretty adaptable person, and knowing the language already, and living in Alcala, I think forced me to really improve my Spanish, because there, like nobody spoke English. Like
Mm.
in
Yeah.
Madrid, people speak English because of the tourism, but Alcala is already an hour away. And I lived with people that didn't really speak any English, like roommates at the time. So yeah, the difficulties I think with moving here were really more like finding housing has
Yeah.
always been very stressful. And it's only gotten worse over the years. And I warn everybody like that is coming to different like cities in Europe. Like if you're coming to Lisbon, if you're coming to Barcelona, Madrid, you need to give yourself months these days.
Yes.
Months.
Yes.
And it's not affordable, and the quality is not good. I hate sounding so negative, but that for me has been the most negative and most difficult part of adapting, because also in the US, like our houses, our apartments tend to be bigger and
Mm.
better quality. Yes, it's more expensive, but like they're bigger. They're better.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Makes sense. I mean, we will talk a little bit more about this but in the fast reply questions. I want to ask you one last question before we jump to the next section. You were coming from journalism, then you teach English. You were teaching English for some years in Spain, but then you did a change of career completely. When is your project with your stellar truth comes in? Where did the idea
Yeah.
spark?
So it's interesting. So I worked in journalism for like two publications. One was actually in upstate New York, in Albany. It was like it reported on state politics, but it wasn't really on one angle or the other. It was just kind of reporting on like, new bills, new laws that were being passed by the state, like Senate and stuff like that. So I worked for that one. And then in Brooklyn, I worked for a hyper local online news source called the Brooklyn Reader. And as a freelance journalist. And then I was teaching at the community college, and then in the US, this is in the US,
Mm-hmm.
in New York City, in Manhattan. And then in Spain, I got my first job teaching at an FFP, like a
Professional formation.
vocational school, we call it in English, a vocational school for tourism and hospitality students. So it was actually really fun. I was teaching to tour guides, like aspiring tour guides, chefs, restaurant workers, mostly teenagers and young adults, but there were some people that were much older that were
Okay.
going back to school. And most of the students, for the most part, they were very, very sweet, very, very, very funny, great to work with. I really liked my boss there, my coworkers. But the program, it was only for 2 years, because if you want
Okay.
to really work there long term, you have to do the oposiciones and like,
Mm-hmm. Enter the
the
public sector.
yeah, and I can because I have a European passport, like I have an Italian passport,
Mm-hmm.
but it was I would have to like go back to school again, and like I don't really want to do that right now. And then I worked at a primary school for a year. I hated it. I prefer teaching adults.
Okay.
I just do better with adults, and it was very big class sizes. I was very underpaid and overworked compared to the other school, and I just wasn't
Okay.
happy. And then a friend of mine told me that his company, like an online journalism company that wrote newsletters, was hiring, and it paid really well, at least for Spain, like,
Mm-hmm.
relative
For
to
the
what we,
standards.
yeah, for the standards, it paid really well. And then I got a job there writing newsletters about business topics. Like I wrote about cloud computing, I wrote about marketing. I wrote about like wine and spirits, just different business topics,
Mm-hmm.
AI, just different developments in the business world. But then that company kind of went under and shut down. And then when that happened, I had been thinking about launching my astrology and astrocartography business. And I kept saying, like, I guess I kind of manifested it because I was just like, okay, like, I was like, if this company fails, or if it ever closes down, like that's when I'm gonna open my business. Because
Okay.
I had been saving money like crazy working there, and I was like, I'll have savings, like, and I'll have the way to do it. And then that's when I decided to launch it. It was like I want to say April, May of last year.
Okay.
But I have been doing readings, like chart readings, astrocartography, like for fun or just for like just for people I knew, like for years, especially during COVID lockdown. Like I had a lot of
Mm-hmm.
free time and I was doing that. And people were like, you really should make like something out of this. They were like, we really like your interpretations and this and that. And that's how I got to like start everything. So it's been a really interesting journey of kind of like working in different fields. And right now for my business, I write on Substack. I write a Substack
Mm-hmm.
multiple times a week. My astrologer friend and I just launched a podcast. So yeah, and I still do teach privately online for
Oh,
like
okay.
Cambridge and TOEFL exams because I love teaching. I really do like enjoy it. I really love
Okay.
it. I love connecting, with the students, like helping them and stuff. So yeah.
Makes sense. Cool. That's a very interesting, like change of journeys and everything. So, sounds like interesting but challenging, I suppose, at some points. Also, I would say we jump to the next section that I prepared. This one, it's like I call it like the fast reply round. So basically, I will put you some topics, and then you need to reply to it 1 minute, 1 minute and a half, let's say like this per question. So the idea is to give the listeners a little bit the snapshot of what is life in Spain, or what is your experience of life in Spain, and what it's really like. So the first one that I have, it's like in general cultural adjustment. We touch it a little bit, but what is the thing that took you a while to adapt, for example, from the Spanish culture?
People might get offended by this, but like I think there is, due to the history of what they went through, I think you know what I'm referring to,
Mm-hmm.
the dictatorship.
Yes.
I think there's a lot of like lack of trust here. Um especially when it comes to foreigners, and just, when you're trying to rent a flat and just do certain things when you're like applying for jobs, like there's this notion, I feel, that you really have to prove yourself, and that has been the hardest thing, like, because as an astrologer, I go on vibes, like I go on
Mm-hmm.
energy. I don't base this kind of stuff on like checking the boxes. And I think they're a little bit like rigid in the way they see things sometimes. So that for me has been the most difficult part of adjusting here. So I'm like sorry if I offend anyone, but
Absolutely. I mean,
yeah.
it's about your experience, and this is
Yeah.
I want to make it clear, like the podcast and the episodes are about your experience abroad, and not it's not always generic. The second one related to this, actually, it's social life. Like, how do you usually meet friends here in Spain, and how you describe Spanish, making connection with Spanish people in general, maybe?
So it's interesting. Like I've met people like through very random ways, right? So I've never been one of those that's like, oh, I'm gonna go to a meetup and
Hmm.
like, you know what I mean? Those kind of
Yeah.
communities. Like, I've never been, I don't know, I just haven't met people that way. I meet people, sometimes I met them through work. I've made friends through my past jobs here. I've made friends. Like I did do a master's where we got the tuition paid for if we were teaching. So
Hmm.
I did that my second year in Alcala, and I made a lot of friends through that who I'm still friends with. And I guess other friends I just met like through my fiance. Like he is Venezuelan and he
Okay.
has a lot of he like has always worked in different like for different organizations in Spain. Um Sometimes I befriended some of his coworkers, and I kind of usually they were women, and I became closer to them than he did, and yeah, like that kind
Happens.
of
Yeah,
thing.
yeah.
We're like very like he and I are very relaxed about that. Like like we could be friends with who we want.
Yeah.
Um, I guess through him, through the masters, through work. They're just going to certain social outings and connecting with people there. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I guess I've never met friends like going to the gym or going to a meetup or any of that really. Like, it's always been maybe like, oh, I met this person, like one of my really good friends that I started the podcast with. She's from South Africa. I met her at a birthday party of a Spanish friend of mine. So it's
Okay.
like through
More
other
like the
people.
context style of connecting with people.
Yeah, maybe that's just my style. Cause I find like in big groups of like new people, like everyone's a bit nervous and a bit awkward, and it's not my setting, I think.
I see. Next one, it's about language. I mean, it's a bit difficult because you already spoke the language back in the day when you arrived to Spain. But do you really think that you can arrive and get by without speaking Spanish? Or I don't know, any tip that you would give anyone who wishes to move to Spain and speak the language?
Can you get by without Spanish? I would say it depends where you are. Obviously, it's always about the context, like the situation. In Alcalá, I don't think so. Like where I lived in the
Mm,
beginning, initially, no. But in the city of Madrid, if you live in like the dead center, if you're in Sol, Malasaña, like those
yeah,
places, yeah, probably. And or if you're in the down south, like in a very like heavy like British community, there's a lot of those like heavy expat type of community, then
groups.
yeah, like there's a lot of them don't speak any Spanish. I think they should learn. I think
It's better.
I don't think it's fair for the locals to expect perfection because we're all trying our best, but I think people should learn the language. I mean, it's so you integrate better, you get more done. You don't you save money because I hear of all these people that they need to pay someone to go to an appointment with them, and I'm
Yeah.
like I'm like when I first moved here, I was like barely scraping by. Like I couldn't even afford like to pay someone to do that, It was everything had to be me paying certain like obviously you need to pay lawyers for certain things, but sometimes it's
Yeah,
like
yeah. More
I
specialized
think you
stuff.
get what I mean. So I would say you can move to Spain without speaking Spanish depending on where you're going, but for the most part like I would say it's going to be more difficult for you, and you're going to need to spend more money on services, and integration won't feel the same. But some people don't necessarily want to integrate, so it depends on like what type of experience the person's looking for.
Makes sense. The next one, it's a little bit tricky, but the cost of living in general, what it's surprisingly cheap, what it's surprisingly expensive. I don't know.
I love this question because this is actually really like that you have this question because there's a lot of content about Spain, Italy, Portugal saying, "Oh my god, it's so cheap and this and that." And I'm like, "Yeah, maybe for you, but if you're coming from Denmark or Norway
Mm,
or Australia or the US or Canada, yeah, it's cheaper, but well, when I first got here in 2019, things were quite well priced, like with 1,000 maybe 300, 400 euros a month, you could live like pretty well. Like I'm not kidding. Like I took like one trip a month, whether it was abroad or somewhere in Spain. I was able to pay my rent, I was able to pay for my food, and maybe save like 200, 300 a month. Like I was able to live really well in the beginning. And granted, you have to remember I was in Alcala.
of course.
maybe if
different
I had
prices.
been in Madrid, and also like less going out and, more homebody. Like I went out, but not as much as I do in Madrid. Not
Yeah.
even close. But I had a really good, like, off of 13, 1400, you could live decently well as a single person. Again, no kids. I don't have kids. I still don't have kids. But over the years, I feel like especially since 2024,
Mm-hmm.
everything is like tripled.
Okay.
Like maybe I'm exaggerating, like, but doubled at least. Like the rents, you used to be able to get a room for 300 a month. Now it's hard to find
That's
anything.
impossible.
Now it's hard to find anything for less than 500, 600. The food has gone up considerably, especially like I'm vegetarian, luckily, but the meat, my fiance complains about it. The meat has
Mm,
gone up a lot. Lactose, sorry,
the
dairy,
dairy products.
dairy products and things have just gotten so expensive. Desserts, like eggs, like things have just. I used to fill up a huge bag of food like for 53, 55 euros, and now
Mm-hmm.
that same bag of food would cost maybe 80, 85. So it's gotten really expensive. The rent's out of control. Like if you want a whole apartment to rent, to buy in Madrid, you're looking at least now for one bedroom, at least like 1200. Maybe outside of the center, maybe you could find for like 900 to 1000. But for what the salaries are here, and for self-employed people like myself, how high the taxes are,
Mm-hmm.
it's hard. I think this is a great country if you're making money from outside. High salaries, like very high, like I would say like at least 60,000, 50,000. Cost of living was it used to be quite affordable. Now I would say it's not affordable at all. A lot of people are having a lot of difficulty, especially locals. Honest review, yeah, very, very, it's gotten very expensive. Inflation is out of control. Uh, yeah,
Yeah.
and I feel like there's no end in. I feel like there's no end in sight.
Yeah. Yeah, it's sad, but I think we are seeing this in a lot of places, unfortunately. Yeah, the next one is kind of related to it, but finding a home. I mean, you touched already a little bit. What you would say to anyone who's trying to find an apartment right now?
Ooh, well, they really ask for a lot. Whether you're buying, renting, they really ask for a lot. You know, like it's going to sound really discouraging, but like if you're coming from another country and you're newly arrived, like you might have to rent out a room instead of a whole place for yourself, because even if you have the money to do it, like they want to see that you have employment records in Spain.
I
They want
see.
to see that you've worked at least maybe a year or 6 months like in the country, and that you've been paying taxes in the country. They often ask for that. Sometimes like if like for whatever reason they don't want to rent to you, but you could still afford it, like you could get a guarantor. They call it an avalista, like
Mm-hmm.
maybe
I see.
your parents or someone who a friend who makes more money than you, or a relative.
Yeah.
But it's tough because if they're, for example, my fiance and I, when we rented our first apartment together, we had his dad do that for us.
Okay.
And I wanted my parents to do it, but they don't make income in Spain, so they wouldn't let
Yeah.
them.
Yeah.
Even
Yeah.
though like they definitely, I think, met the requirements, but
Needs
yeah,
to be Spanish
so
salary.
yeah, so like I think it's like, you have to be very, very flexible and adaptable. Like, yes, you come to a country, maybe you really want your own place right away, but you might have to settle for renting a room initially for maybe the first 6 months to a year. I mean, I did it, for 2 years actually. And I guess, yeah, like, look in if you're on a budget, look in areas outside of the center. Madrid, for example, the good thing about Madrid is that it's a very big city, so there are lots of options in terms of neighborhoods.
Mm-hmm.
And the more central areas are the ones that are more competitive when it comes to finding housing. So I've actually never lived in the city center before that reason, because I prefer to like get more space for my money. I don't want to feel like I'm in a shoebox.
Yeah,
So
makes sense.
when you tend to go outside of the city center, like further from the city center, you could get better things for for the value, like better, more space, maybe more amenities. But yeah, it's not easy, and they ask for a lot. They tend to ask for references from landlords, from previous landlords, nominas, which are like pay stubs
Mm.
from several months before. The guarantor thing, like I said, yeah, they ask for a lot, so just brace yourself for that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's difficult. I know about it also. I mean, from my years in Barcelona, it was one. I don't really like the term, but living like a local, at the end, you never are local, in my opinion. But for someone who wants to blend in and really like adapt, I don't know. What would you recommend to them, or what would be the mistakes that you would tell them to avoid?
Well, first of all, I guess the language, the first like is the first thing. Like, I don't know, like if you're speaking English very loudly with a group of other English speakers, the locals might be like a little bit, I don't know, like turned off by that.
Mm.
Like, so I think it's important to try and befriend locals, but not to like only want to befriend them because they're a local. Like, it's important to connect with people like on a genuine level, right?
Mm.
So maybe, like finding workshops, like meetups that are hosted in Spanish, or like language exchanges could be a good way to meet locals. Like, I go to this community art class that this really nice young woman hosts here in Madrid in La Latina. And it's like, she always makes it clear, like it's for English and Spanish speakers. So there's tends to be more English speakers, but there are sometimes Spanish speakers that come.
Hmm.
So it's like looking for things that aren't exclusively geared towards expats. Um, because I think the issue with some of these like expat groups and events is that like sometimes they exclusively gear all of their events and things like that towards expats, and like I think it could be a way they could try and use it as an opportunity to bridge the gap. And I
Mm.
feel like not enough people are doing that. If that does that make sense what I'm
Yeah,
saying?
absolutely. I completely agree. I've seen that also.
Yeah, like, and also like with local businesses, like there's a lot of businesses owned by expats, and they tend to be more like, I guess, gentrified.
Mm.
Like, they tend to be very expensive, and some of them have great things. Like, oh, there's this cafe. I think the owners are from Taiwan, and they make amazing matcha, but all the workers, like, mostly only speak English. Like, actually, like one time I went in there speaking Spanish, and the guy was like, "Can you please speak English?" And I was like, "Okay, like sure." Like, I mean, easier for me, but like it's kind of awkward because it's like, well, I mean, you're in there, like you're in Spain though. Like,
Yeah.
it's like, I think it makes more sense if the client says like, "Can you speak English?" I'm sorry, I don't speak Spanish, and then they speak in English. But
Yeah.
whatever, I don't care. Like, it's fine. If a local goes there and has that kind of interaction, I don't think it's going to leave it might leave a bad impression. So I think it's important to try and go to businesses that are like owned locally, and were like, you know what I mean? Like, that aren't just owned by expats. And I think the mistake that a lot of expats make is they frequent businesses that are only owned by like expats or whatever. And like, you know, that doesn't really give you the true experience. And I think it's good to go to both, not just one type of business.
Yeah. Balance a
Um,
bit. Absolutely.
yeah.
Nice. Next one. I mean, you've been talking a little bit, but work life. How is the job market? How is the work culture in Spain compared to US?
Like, well, starting off with the job market, I think it's quite challenging. Spain is a country that has very high unemployment, and I think more than unemployment, very high underemployment. So, meaning like, if this person studied to be a psychologist, but they're working in something that's not that, like, for example, like, you're working, you studied to be a psychologist, but you're working, I don't know, in a perfumeria, like a Druni or something.
Yeah.
Not to knock those jobs, but it's not what you studied for,
Studied for, yeah.
Yeah, but I'd say the job market's challenging, but like it depends on what kind of job you're looking for. Like, I think I think people who are in like STEM fields tend to have a better luck finding
Hmm.
work. There's certain sectors that could be attractive to a lot of people, like tourism. I feel like people tend to find jobs in that sector. English teaching and tourism, though, are very oversaturated, so they're underpaid. But I'd say it's pretty challenging. I actually was reading an article, I don't remember the source. I think it was Euronews, where they said that Madrid was like the most challenging city to find work in Europe. Madrid and Barcelona. Oh, yeah, and I think the issue that I see in Barcelona a bit more than Madrid is that there's a lot of startups, which you would think is good, but like some of them crash and burn.
Yes.
And I've had friends seeing a lot of in Barcelona
Hmm.
experiencing a lot of like job instability
I see.
because of that huge startup culture. But like I have had friends that have had success in the job market here, but like they're kind of like far and few in between.
Okay.
I think the people I know who are doing the best are like either have remote jobs from another country or they like are in STEM or they have a very, very advanced like teaching degree and they're able
Hmm.
to teach in like international schools.
I see.
But what was the other question? Was that it?
Yeah, I think you covered it for sure. Or the
The
work
work
culture thing.
culture, like different from the US. I think, but I've only really in Spain, I've only really worked in schools. And I don't know, I mean, the first school I worked at, like there was a lot of flexibility with how I could teach and run my like lessons. And then the second school was much more rigid. Like it just had to be the textbook and it was very like by the book and I couldn't really go like deviate from that.
Hmm.
And I think just from what I see, not the most efficient work culture here. Like a lot of like I like to call it, maybe you could censor me, like I like to call it like bitch work. Like they just arbitrary tasks and things that you could do that you don't need to do or that could be done more efficiently or like like making you come into the office like more than you should have to like yeah, I feel like there's more of a hierarchy here, and like the boss is like, well, I'm your boss, and you should be thankful that you got this job. Like a lot of that attitude, a lot of that. I mean, I haven't experienced that personally, but I've seen a lot of that with friends of mine and people who've worked in different like firms here. So
Yeah. No, no, unfortunately. The next one, it's getting around, actually. Best way to move around Madrid in this case.
I mean, I definitely walking, like it's a very walkable city. It is true that some areas are very crowded and it's a bit of a pain to walk there, but the sidewalks like are very I think compared to a lot of other cities, they're quite well kept and in good condition. And the city's pretty safe for considering how big of a city it is. I feel safe there for the most part. I would say walking, but then obviously it's a big city, so sometimes it's too far to walk from one place to another. Um, I would say the metro's pretty good. It's cheap, very cheap. The city buses are fine, but there could be more traffic. Just Renfe, I hate Renfe. Like
You and
the
everyone.
the yeah. I If you could avoid Renfe is like more of like the commuter train. If you could avoid that, I would avoid it, but sometimes you have to take it, but I don't like it. It's kind of sketchy, like it's rarely on time. It has a lot of delays and
Hmm.
problems.
Yes.
But everything else, the interurbanos, like the green buses that take you to like places outside of the city are fine. Like they're usually decent. But the only thing I would say, like, avoid Renfe. Rideshare apps too are like not too expensive in Madrid, and there are so many. Like, there's Bolt, there's Free Now, there's
Hmm.
Cabify, there's Uber. Like, it's easy to get around. Easier than Barcelona. Much better than Barcelona in that regard. I will defend Madrid in that regard. It is easier to
Okay.
get around and cheaper than Barcelona.
Yeah, cheaper for sure.
No, I don't think cheaper. It's cheaper to live in. I think the housing, the food is more or less the same, but the
No, no,
transportation is
transportation, I meant.
yeah, the transportation is much cheaper and much better in my
Yeah.
opinion.
What about healthcare?
I use the public one
Hmm.
and I haven't people talk really badly about it, but I haven't had issues with it. Like,
Okay.
I'm autónoma, so I pay those taxes as an autónoma, and I want to get what I'm paying for, and
Hmm.
don't I haven't had the need to go to a private, like, to pay for a private insurance. Even
Okay.
the private insurance, like when I compare to the US, it's quite affordable. Like, probably I think like now maybe 70 a month or something like that, 50, 60, 70. And I've had private insurance before with like my old jobs, and it was very good. I'm very satisfied with the healthcare here, both the public and the private. I've actually found that the public is better. The only thing is like dental, it doesn't really cover dental. So like when I go to the dentist, I have to pay out of pocket, and it's a lot of money.
Hmm.
I think dental is quite expensive everywhere,
Yes, it is.
which is messed up because like you could get like brain issues and heart problems from
Hmm.
teeth problems. So it's kind of messed up that it's not really like, I still don't understand if it's included in the public, but every time I've tried to figure that out, it seems too complicated. And
Unless it's
yeah.
an emergency, normally, I think. If it's still like when I was living in there, it's only covering emergency stuff normally.
Yeah, so I use the public one, and really like I haven't had many issues. I think it depends on which district you live in. Some are more overwhelmed than others, so it really depends, but I've had a good experience with it. So, yeah.
Nice. Well, one of the last ones. I have three more: bureaucracy, paperwork, visas, permits, etc., etc. Like,
So, like I said, I'm lucky. I have the Italian passport. I didn't really need to get a visa or that stuff,
mm,
but I definitely could speak about the experiences of like my friends, and it's a nightmare. Like, I think the bad thing about Europe, like the EU with this stuff, is that like you have to renew more frequently. In the
mm,
US, I don't know. I mean, now God knows with this guy, but like at least in the US, it seems like you get a visa, and a lot of the times it'll last like 10 years, or because they don't want, the US likes more efficiency. So like
mm,
they don't want to have like people on the clock just like renewing paperwork from a year ago. But in the EU, it's like in some cases, like you have to really keep renewing your things. And sometimes, they have to mail you, it's called the TIE, the TIE
mm,
card, the Tarjeta Identidad de Extranjeros, I think that's what it stands for. And I have friends that, they'll be waiting months for that stupid card. And it's bad because if the police stop them and they don't have it, or if they want to travel outside of Spain, it's a problem. And I haven't really had friends like complain about the prices of like visas and paperwork. I think it's not as bad as some other countries. Um it's yeah, and like sometimes I've had friends that they want to renew their status, and then they get rejected, and it makes no sense that they get rejected, and
mm.
then they have to go pay for a lawyer. So it can be really tough for some people. Luckily, I haven't really had to deal with that. But yeah, not the most efficient system. I have dealt with bureaucracy, with the empadronamiento, like registering my address, getting my NIE, and it was, some of the things were more straightforward than others. I definitely think it's better than the Italian bureaucracy.
Probably yes.
I think anything is better than that. I don't know. In my experience, it hasn't been like that bad.
Hmm.
But like again, everyone's experience is different, and Madrid, I think a lot of money by the federal government is like invested into
Yes.
Madrid. But when you're in maybe a pueblo, like a town in like Jaén or something, maybe then it's, I don't know, but then Madrid gets more immigrants, so it might be overwhelmed. I I don't know. Bureaucracy's pretty bad here, but I don't think it's like the way it is in Italy or even France. I've heard is crazy.
Mm,
Yeah, but my fiance, for example, like he's been trying to he became a citizen, and he has to switch from NIE to DRI for his driver's license, and he cannot get an appointment, and it's been over a year. So it could be
there
really
is.
bad here too. It could be very bad, and everything is with an appointment, and
Yeah.
yeah, there's no getting around that usually. Usually, unless you get someone really, really nice.
Okay, the last two. The first one, it's basically best and worst of living in Spain. What's the best thing and the worst thing?
I'd say the best thing, there's, I guess, there's a tie between I really love the variety, like the geographic like variety. Like I really love how like, you could have places like desert-ish places, like mountains, green, lush, but you also have like the coast and you also have like, Andalusia has that beautiful like Islamic like
Mm-hmm.
architecture. Like I love the variety from one place to another and I love how you could go from one type of vibe to another in just a couple hours. I love how there's high speed trains across the country. The US doesn't have that,
Mm-hmm.
you know? I really I really like that within the same country there's so much variety and there's so much to see and like, the history is so interesting. I also really like the nightlife here in Madrid. It is like top tier. I love the nightlife here. There's always something to do on a weekend. And there's something for everyone, if you like reggaeton, if you like rock music, if you like indie, if you like whatever type of music scene you like, there is something here for you, you know?
Nice. Yep.
So I think I see people on TikTok saying like there's only electronic music, but like no, you just have to research.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of options. So those are my favorite things about Madrid. I know you said one thing, but I guess that was kind of like three.
All good.
And then my least favorite thing, like I said a little bit like certain things about the mentality,
Mm-hmm.
the like not trusting people thing, like that's hard for me. I still haven't accepted that.
I see.
I would say just that really, I think that overall like people here, they've been very welcoming when it comes down to it, they've been very welcoming and I've met some great people.
Nice. Last one that I have for this section, watching at the time a little bit also, it's the top tip that you would give to someone who is planning to move to Madrid nowadays.
The top tip, I guess I would say visit before you come here. Visit before you come here because if you're looking for that like very charming Spanish life, it's not really what you're going to get in Madrid.
Okay.
Because I think a lot of people have this idea of like a place as just a whole country, like you were saying before. So I think if you could afford it, well, I think if you could afford to move here, you probably could afford to visit. At this point, definitely visit beforehand. And another tip I would say is just like, do your research, do your due diligence. And this doesn't only apply to living in Madrid, this applies to anywhere.
Mm.
Do research on Reddit, on Numbeo. Reddit, I like that it's very unfiltered, you know? Don't trust these influencers. Do not trust them. Do not trust them. They hype places up. They get paid to lie, guys. They get paid to lie. Go like look into, real, some of my content talks about moving abroad. There's lots of great creators who are really authentic and real about moving abroad. They tell you the whole picture, not just the dream picture that you're sold on Instagram and TikTok. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Makes sense. Cool. I mean, checking a little bit on the watch, I would say I would go directly to give you a little bit of space or time to talk about what you're working on, the projects that you have on. You touched about it a little bit on while we were talking about your work life, let's say like this, and transition. Maybe your project about your stellar truth, the podcast that you're starting. But basically, where can listeners find you and contact you if they want to work with you also?
Yeah, so my business is it's called Your Stellar Truth. It is I I basically I offer astrology services and astrocartography services as well as I also offer like a package that combines astrocartography with like relocation guidance and planning. And so I do like one-on-one sessions. I offer packages, more like long-term kind of astrocartography, like relocation coaching packages. I'm on Substack. My Substack is primarily where I post. That's where I host my new podcast that I just started with my friend, and where I host the astrocartography edit newsletter, where I talk about all things related to astrocartography. I also write astrology content is on there as well. I am on Instagram under the handle Your Stellar Truth. I'm on TikTok under the handle Your Stellar Truth. And then I guess you could share I'll send you the Substack link to share in the bio because it's kind of like complicated. It's like, I think it's like, yeah, I can't even remember exactly what it is. And then I have a website as well, yourstellartruthastrology.com. And so, yeah, I'm primarily on, I would say, Instagram and Substack. I love written content and podcasting. I don't love making reels, so I don't have that many of those. But yeah, if you like reading about this stuff, reading about moving abroad, living abroad, astrocartography, if you want to learn more about astrocartography, I highly encourage you to check out my Substack, my website, and to reach out to me.
Perfect. Yeah, for everyone listening at the end, like all the links, as always, will be in the description of the episode. So you can go to Isabel's social media, Substack, website, whatever you want to do the content.
And the code, I added a discount code for your listeners.
Perfect.
It's applicable on my website only. And it is 15% off of anything that they buy, book, whatever. And it is Astro111 in caps, like in all capital letters. Astro111.
Perfect.
So,
I mean,
yeah.
You get even a discount code. So just go and check it out on the description. Isabel, thank you a lot for sharing and for being with me today at this episode and talking a little bit about your life, your transition from New York to Madrid, but also a bit about the mini lesson that you gave about astrology and astrocartography. Yeah, very, very interesting. Thanks a lot for joining. So yeah, that's everything for today's episode of Expat Experts. Don't forget to follow, subscribe, and leave a review on your favorite podcast platform. Also, go and check everything from Isabel. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and see you in the next episode of Expat Experts.
Thank you.